All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Great River Rapport workshop. So my name is Yannick Rozo, and I am a research assistant with the St. Lawrence River Institute, working on the Great River Rapport project. So this workshop is part of a series of workshops as part of the Great River Rapport, which aims to get community members engaged in this ecosystem health report. So our workshop today is focused on foraging, and we are joined with a special guest. So Nancy Hildebrand is an expert forager from the region, and she has agreed to give a presentation on how she forages, some of her foraging practices, and her tips and tricks. So I will pass it over to you, Stephanie and Nancy. Thanks.
Hello, before I introduce myself, I'm here joined with my daughter, Stephanie Hildebrand, who will be my technical and emotional support. Anyway, as I said before, my name is Nancy Hildebrand. I studied at the St. Lawrence College as an environmental technician in the past and have worked for the South Nation Conservation Authorities and as well as the Raisin Region Conservation Authorities. I describe myself as a naturalist with a strong interest in ecology and the environment. So why do I forage? Well, this is about foraging and also my dandelion coffee / tea recipe. And I will walk you through this all. I'm interested in learning about plants for security and independence. Basically, it means I have more options when it comes to food sourcing and medicinal plants. It's great when I don't need to go to the store or I'm out in the woods and I still can figure out what I'm going to put together. It's also another reason it's healthy alternatives for food and medicines. I do prefer that my food is not sprayed or contaminated with anything. And it is another option if I go foraging, because I go to places where they don't use pesticides or herbicides, or how you put salt on the roads. So yeah, so I can choose where I'm getting my food from locally. And in general, I compare what I pick to what we go in the grocery stores for. For example, our strawberries in the grocery stores, or which are cultivated, are a lot bigger, but they're not as concentrated in taste or nutrients. That would be one reason why I do this, as seeing it as healthier. Foraging teaches you the importance of diversity. Where there is more diversity, I believe, in ecosystems, there's more protection from pests, disease, and also from the effects of climate change. So that is very important to think about, because if you bring in one plant and it's the only plant, if it gets a pest going to it, there's no other type of plant around that might host the predator for the plant that's being, for the insect that's attacking the plant. So that's just a simple example, but it goes much further than that. So basically, diversity is very important. Foraging guidelines. I have these papers here right now to help me go through this. Excuse me a moment. Oh, that's the rules. Yes, we have to get to that. There's things you must do when you do that. So we'll go to the next page, Stephanie. Yeah, avoid wasting precious resources by never taking more than you can use, or ripping out everything around you in order to get to what you want to use, which is something that we should be careful with. So basically, an example would be wild garlic. If you see a patch of 50 plants, I wouldn't call that very much. You might take a couple of bulbs. I wouldn't take them all out. And if I feel that that's not a good idea, I might just take one out of the 2 leaves home with me on a few plants and dry them up and use them as seasoning in salads or cooking. So I personally don't need to destroy an area of 50 garlics to make a jar of pickled garlic. So be reasonable, use your brains, and don't waste. Always leave some plants, like I said, grow back and strong again. Yeah, you leave some older plants because they're going to make the seeds for the next generation. So yeah, and you also have to think about maybe somebody else is going to pass by and take something. So yeah, use your discretion, you know, and always leave something behind for sure. And I don't mean one plant, I'm thinking more like 5 or 6 minimum. Oh, tread lightly and leave as little damage to the area as possible. There's a lot we see on top of the soil, but there's a whole ecosystem underneath the soil. For instance, mushrooms is a great example. If you're going foraging for mushrooms that grow in groups, like for instance, the chanterelle, you walk carefully around the edges to pick the fruiting part of the mushroom, which is what we eat, and try not to disturb the soils underneath it, which has all these interconnected, how do you say, organs that create those beautiful mushrooms you like to eat. So I don't want to destroy it. I want to be able to come back and hopefully see that again there. So that goes for a lot of things. It includes the insects, bacteria, fungi, and molds that all grow in the soil working together. So let's try to be careful not to destroy that. Okay, another thing talking about making of mushrooms. Everybody can identify with this. Make sure you positively identify anything you plan to ingest beyond a shadow of a doubt. There's a lot of things that look similar. And if you don't make sure that you have exactly what you're supposed to have, you can get sick and maybe even die from it. So really make sure that I can't stress that enough. And some plants, they might look similar at a certain stage, especially young plants. So again, if you're not sure, research it or go with somebody who knows what they're doing when they pick it. Sorry, my dog seems to be quite excited in the back. Hopefully we'll calm down. Yeah, sorry. Understand which part of the plants are edible, when they're edible, and how to process and preserve them. Well, which part of the plants are edible? Well, you know, with tomatoes, you can only eat the fruit, right? Because the rest is toxic. With the potatoes, it's the root. With the rhubarb, it's only the stem because everything else may be dangerous for you. So really know which part of the plants are edible. Another thing is when they are edible, like let's say, for instance, you could eat a whole plant of something, you will use different parts of the plants differently, and you will preserve them differently or process them differently. Here we come back to being sure the area is not tainted with herbicides, pesticides, or roadside contamination. It almost looks obvious in some places where they spray under power lines for some reason or another to keep things clear for them to work. You'll see stunted, sick growth, browning leaves. Something's wrong, and you feel it, you see it. And I would stay clear away, even if nobody's going there. One of the places that is not good is, again, under power lines. Another place, side of roads, side of sidewalks, because some people treat for ragweed and pests. I find that even your front lawn, if it's not more than 8 feet away, you might have contamination of some sort. So, I mean, closest might be your backyard if you're very conscientious about what you put in your backyard. Other places could be pastures where animals graze. If you ask for permission from the farmer, I'm sure he doesn't mind. Just be careful of his bull in the corner in the field. He might not like you treading on his territory, but yeah. I mean, use your judgment and then share the information. A lot of people are interested in learning more from what you are doing. So don't be shy to ask your neighbors or farmers. So there we go. Ask for permission to access property. Thank you. Sorry. She was there playing with my dog for a moment there. Okay, a plant is not here. What are weeds? Some people say it's a plant that's not valued where it is growing and is usually a vigorous growth. Well, sometimes perennials have to be moved around too in the garden, especially ones that tend to overgrow or choke out more desirable plants. Well, yeah, I guess. What we see is weeds have an important function with any given ecosystem, and they're important to our survival and that of our planet. Definitely, I had another way of putting that here. A definite form. Another part is if we want to take it on a human scale, what a weed is, and maybe we'll change our perspective. It's It's a plant that's not well understood and feels rejected. So maybe we should give it a second chance and we can make friends with them, and they would be really happy to help us out. Now we'll talk about some simple things that we run into, which generally are quite easy to identify. Purslane, it's one of those succulent plants, and they kind of like a almost viney, but it's more or less thick stems and thick juicy leaves in the shape of teardrops with a little bit of reddish around the edges. This plant is non-native, comes from Europe, and sometimes you see it in some grocery stores in Europe as a vegetable plant. You can eat it raw in salads or cooked or stewed or what have you. I incorporate it with different vegetables for fillings, for enchiladas or something, if you like. I love it. But the biggest thing about it, it has amazing amounts of omega-3s in it. And it's a great alternative to eating your avocados, which come from who knows where, far away, where there's a monoculture of trees sucking the ground dry. So purslane, which grows just between your cement patio tiles, is quite readily there, and you don't even have to garden to plant it to grow it. It just, you can find it. It's easy and very nutritious. Wild parsnip. Oh, wild parsnip, poisonous parsnip and all that. Oh my gosh, terrible thing this plant is. Everybody hates it, scared of it. I have respect for it. I think the word respect would be better. It is actually an escape. Another plant introduced to Canada as a food. Actually, I think it predated the potato coming to Canada as a starchy food. And the problem with this is people have little understanding. They don't even know that the wild parsnip is actually a cultivated parsnip that escaped. And if you go out to pick it or forage it, of course, you're actually foraging the young first-year plants. It's a biannual. You don't get it when it's flower-eaten because then it's woody, the stems. So I personally go in the fall and I look for the New Year's growth rosettes that didn't have any flowers, and I dig them up like you would carrots or anything. But don't do it on a sunny day. I covered myself with clothes from cover my arms, cover my legs, and I wear gloves, and I take a shovel. I leave the leaves behind because I only want the root. I'm not going to drag it all over me. The root does not have those oils on them, like the leaves and the stems and the flowers. So just understand it. It has, if you do get in contact with it, please wash it off as quickly as possible with soap and water. It's an oil base, so that will break it up. And I mean quickly. If you are in the sun, it can cause severe blistering that can take a long time to heal. So again, take your precautions and know when to harvest. Plantain. Oh, I love these. They're so cute. I've been told they're called white man's footprint because they're non-native plants. And wherever people came, when they came to this country, they kind of brought the seeds with them. Very important plant. It's been used in Europe and other places. There's several varieties. Here's the broadleafed one. And what we do is we use the young leaves. We can eat them raw. The whole plant is actually edible. I won't eat the root, but the leaves and the seeds are edible. When they're young, they're tender. They're almost sweet, great in salads. You can use them in stir fries. When they get older, they get a bit more tougher, so you might want to boil them once before using them. They're great for healing. The medicinal properties include reducing swellings from rashes and insect bites. I did see that actually happen to my nephew, where I took a bruised leaf to a mosquito bite that welted him because he had an allergic reaction, and took it away within about an hour. So it really seems to help. It also helps for blisters, scratches, if you like, not deep wounds. I wouldn't go that far, but it seems to heal it and soothe it and remove the pain. Creeping thyme, we buy that at the garden center, but sometimes you find it creeping in lawns and parks and everywhere else, and it escapes very nicely. It is more drought resistant than grass, and people are starting to think of using it as a cover instead of lawn, because lawn requires more water, and it's also quite low maintenance. You don't have to mow it as often, and it gives a nice scent and pink flowers or white flowers. I use it for seasoning. There's all kinds of medicinal properties, and some of them help with throat irritations or asthma, and also for inflammations of certain areas or swellings. So, but I personally just use it as a seasoning, and sometimes in a tea that I'll combine with other herbs. Milkweed. The monarch butterfly is heaven. We definitely have to protect this plant. We have seen a great decline in the monarch butterfly. I mean, it has to run into so many hazards on its treks and then come back with, I'm sure they really appreciate having milkweed to protect them through their latex that's in the plant, the white milk that comes from breaking a stem. And of course, they eat it, but I eat it too. My preference is the flowers when they're still in bud, still tight, and they look like little broccoli stems. And I will pick those and I will boil it in 2 changes of water to take the most of the latex out, and then serve it as a vegetable or incorporate it as a vegetable in my meals. Very delicious. Tastes a little bit softer than broccoli, but with a little nutty flavor. Dandelion. I think it's one of the greatest plants on earth, actually, but not everybody agrees with me. I'm going to get to a sheet because there's a lot of stuff about it, and I'm just touching the surface. I am keeping it as short as possible, but it's almost impossible. Okay, so I'll try my best. Again, it's a non-native, highly adaptive, can find it almost all over the world, and now almost. It has many, many medicinal properties that they are just starting to understand and study. I will give you a site at the end that you can look at, which is, how you say, a nice little intro with references that you can click on, and will take you to abstracts. I'm keeping it simple. I mean, I'm not going to go spend 3 hours on here going through all the research and different references. I think I'll give you where you can start, and you can go from there. So medicinal properties, it is a diuretic. It protects it, and I'm going to use the word may from a lot of things because we are still in the process of having to do more testing and lab work. Of course, what's happening in a test tube and what's happening in a mouse or a rat doesn't necessarily correlate to humans. And of course, that requires funding to do so. And pharmaceutical companies might not make that much money off of it if everybody can get to it. So we're going to have a long way to go, but we'll go with what the history says and what we have found out basically so far that hints to its potentials for it. So we have the diuretics, protects liver possibly and liver detox. Antioxidants in roots may prevent drug-resistant melanoma cells from proliferating. May, remember these, just put the word may in everything I say now, and then we'll have to go with more research, but you'll see it's getting interesting. May help with weight control, may help with digestive disorders such as poor appetite, chronic constipation, minor upset stomach. There's even been an article describing how 3 patients recovered from leukemia using dandelion on a regular basis. Antioxidants, again, that prevents and slows down age-related bone damage. It contains inulin, a soluble dietary fiber that is a prebiotic. Many anti-inflammatory properties. I've used it always as a blood tonic. Well, it says it's great for anemia because it's a rich source of iron, vitamin C, magnesium, and may lower bad cholesterol. Prevents the breakdown of fats and antioxidants. So we keep on going. Improves blood health by improving blood absorption. Boost bowel production, gallbladder health, reduce risk of gallstones. Pain relief, reduces whole body inflammation with consistent use. People who suffer maybe from cancers or other autoimmune disorders, and a lot of diseases will find their root with inflammation. So that will help. If we can deal with inflammation, we probably deal with a lot of problems. It improves by making your immune system stronger because of the anti-inflammatory antioxidant action. Addresses nutrient deficient types, depression caused by nutrition deficiencies and inflammation. May protect against certain microbes by killing antibiotic resistant bacteria. Helpful for acne, rosacea, and eczema. Of course, that's inflammation again. Studies confirm, there are some studies, and they do confirm it works for liver, gallbladder, and kidney health. Okay, now the nutrients found in this. This is what you will encounter: vitamin A, B, certain Bs, not B12. We know that's usually sourced from animals, but a lot of the B vitamins, especially B6, I believe. Vitamin C, D, riboflavin, fiber, inulin, calcium, iron, potassium, magnesium, and fatty acids. Why are we chucking this plant and trying to kill it? I don't know. So here we are. We talked about the medicinal purposes. Yes, we've talked about they're the first ones in large profusion that will help feed our pollinating insects, especially bees, which come out of a harsh winter and need to survive. So we are actually helping the pollinators. Pollinators are very important if we want our food crops to do well, especially the fruiting ones. We should be really protecting our pollinators at this point and helping them out. And of course, the dandelion basics, all parts are edible. Unless you're allergic to something in the Asteraceae family, daisies, I think, or belong to it, asters, of course. No, asters is something else. You know, it's asters, I think ragweed. Check and see if you have allergies with it or not. I go to. So how do we use them? Well, the flowers, we can make fritters, like dipping them in a batter and then frying them in oil. A lot of people most know it for making wine, the flowers. I prefer the buds before they open up, and I use them as a vegetable, steamed, fried, stir-fried, soup, stews, what have you. I like them as a side dish. Leaves, again, fresh for salads, steamed as a spinach when they're young, boiled when they're older, when they're bitter. Best way to do it is, let's say, for instance, a full pot of water and add about a teaspoon of salt, throw it into the boiling water to remove the bitterness, or at least reduce it, and then use it as you would other things such as spinach. Roots, you can either make a coffee replacement or a tea, great for the blood and liver. Now we're going to talk about all these steps that we're going to be going through about making dandelion root tea or coffee. 1 is foraging, 2, digging, 3, cleaning, cutting, drying, storing, roasting, grinding, steeping, and drinking. That's the best part. So we'll go on. First, foraging, when and where to pick. I think I've mentioned, make sure it's nicely clean, avoid commercial lawns, roadside locations, and certain under power lines. Early spring, that's before budding. That's when the roots are thick, full of energy, and they haven't used it and depleted it in order to create the flower and seeds. And that's when they usually get a bit dry and bitter too, or harder too. Late autumn, usually you have a second crop of dandelions and that seed themselves and start growing. So you're looking for the young plants, the rosettes, and you will be pulling them out. And then, of course, just because it's easier to clean and you don't drag as much dirt home with you, go on dry, non-rainy days to knock off the dirt. Choosing the plants, that we've spoken about that before when we're foraging. As you see, this thing looks like it's been sprayed with some wonderful herbicide. I would not touch that plant because whatever happened to it, I don't want it happening to me. So look for healthy, lush green plants. Some plants have spots on it, could be some kind of disease, but we don't know for sure. We don't know if it's a pesticide or an herbicide. It looks burned, don't touch. So anyway, sick looking plants, again, as you see, may be a warning sign. Digging. I prefer a longer spade than the one in the picture, but look at the nice green leaves. This is what I'm looking for. It's never flowered before. It's early season, and I know I'm going to get some really good roots out of that. The plant is just full of nutrition. So I'm going to take a deep spade and, or if I'm in a lawn in my backyard that I haven't contaminated, I'll maybe use a hand spade that I would use for digging tulip bulbs. Now the roots can go down up to about 1.5 feet. And if you just break half of it, I almost guarantee you, you're going to have hydra come up the next time with several rosettes from the same root. So when you dig around the plant, you want to dig vertically down into the ground and then loosen it and then pull it by hand. Sometimes you have to dig out one side and then dig out next to that side to loosen it up. And then you remove the leaves. I'm not going to, because the leaves are a lot of volume. If you're not going to use them, you just want to take the root, you'll see how much you actually have. Here I am just digging. Now we go to cleaning. So if I have my bucket full of roots, I take them home and I take the hose. I'm going to do this outside. I run clean, clear hose water over it, and I swish it around to loosen up the dirt. And then I pour it out, and I do this several times until it looks pretty clear. And in the meantime, I might even use what you call a vegetable brush to try to brush off any more dirt. So I do this until the water is clear. Cutting. So now we're going to cut it, and it's best to cut it before you dry it. It's impossible to cut easily if it's dry. So I do it while it's still fresh. And I cut into little 1/2 centimeter pieces. And I use a knife for the thinner, for the bigger roots that can be quite big, up to maybe 1 inch diameter, sometimes more if you're lucky, or a knife for the smaller ones to slice through. Because of the way the roots are made, and sometimes you have the hydra form, dirt traps in between. So I rinse again till I get the last bits of dirt out. Here I'm cutting, now drying. So when I drain them a bit. There's 3 ways you can dry it. You can stick it in the oven at the lowest temperature. Most ovens go down to 170 with the door slightly ajar, and this will take several hours and a lot of electricity. It's my 3rd method, if nothing else works. The other way is probably air dry, where you put it on a screen, like you can use a cheesecloth put over a screen that you use to put your cake on to cool, and put it in a well aerated, dry area with good ventilation. Or the one way that's fastest and most efficient, where you have the most control, where you don't have to worry about humidity in the air too much, is using a dehydrator. When I use the dehydrator, I don't use the highest heat setting because I'm always afraid of destroying any vitamins in it. So I kind of go on the lower side, warm but not hot, and I dry it. Generally it takes about 12 hours, but it depends on the quantity and the thickness, so you have to check. Storing. I like these antique jars, and I just put them in airtight. I haven't sucked the air out of it, but just to prevent it from having any more air go into it. This is when they are completely dry. And then I put them in a dark, dry, cool area. Some people it's a closet, some people it's a basement pantry. Roasting. This is where we differentiate from root tea and root coffee. Root tea, we don't need to roast it. We can take fresh roots, or we can take dried roots, but you're not roasting it to get the tea. So you're not going to get that brown color. It's going to be more clear as a tea. If you want to replace your coffee, this is what we do. At least this is what I do. I like fresh roast, so I don't want to roast it and then keep it for a year. So I only roast what I need for a week or two. If you're taking 2 teaspoons per cup and you drink a cup a day, that's 28 teaspoons for 2 weeks. So, and of course, it will be based on the size of your pan. I prefer an iron cast pan because it has equal, has heat that distributes more evenly and holds the heat better. So I get more even cooking. And I do not use oil for this. Remember, I'm roasting. So I throw it into the pan. I prefer just a maximum 1 layer. I don't, up to 2 layers, but then you're trying to roast it evenly. So if it's just 1 layer, it's a lot easier. And you will be roasting on high heat in a large cast iron pan and stirring continuously to prevent any areas from staying in one place and burning too much. And you'll notice there's the little hair still left on some of the roots. When they start turning dark brown, it's about where you want to stop stirring and taking it off the pan and letting it cool. Grinding, methods of grinding. Well, there's several. I would not try the mortar and pestle. Cafe grinder's good, or the magic bullet. With the magic bullet, I would not put more than 3 tablespoons in the magic bullet at the time because I want a consistent coarse sand-like texture. If I put any more, you'll end up with a bunch of gravel on the top and silt on the bottom, the analogy. Grind a bit at a time. Another one you can use is also the blender if you don't have the other 2 ways. Steeping. As I said before, it's about 2 teaspoons per cup. You add your boiling water, but some people use a tea strainer, tea ball, tea infuser. I repurposed my David's tea strainers. They're the greatest because they cover, how you say, they cover the inside of the cup, so you have a lot more water flowing through easily, and it's not packing everything into one area. So I get the most out of my dandelion root coffee here. So I add the boiling water, and I stir it a little bit because some of it floats, and then I steep it for 5 to 10 minutes. Drinking. Now, remember, this is now the step, because it's roasted, it's more like a coffee. It has it's a little bit more bitter, similar to chicory, and with a little bit of a chocolate flavor to it, which is really nice. If you like dark chocolate, you'll notice it. So I let it steep, and I check and see if it's strong enough for me. Sometimes I leave it for 10 minutes. I prefer my coffee with cream and a little bit of sweetener. And if you want to kind of get extravagant, you can add another 1/4 teaspoon of cocoa, maybe a bit of cinnamon. Play with it. Pretend it's coffee, but there's no caffeine and a lot better for you. It's still a diuretic, so you still get that property if you need that. So, and then you would enjoy it. Now, I have to put a disclaimer here. I'm not a doctor. I wish I was, but that's not what happened. I'm here now. Please check for possible allergic reactions. So look up your plant and see what's related to, and if you're allergic to anything like that. Go a little bit at a time if you want to try and proceed from there on to see if you have a reaction. And there, of course, are some plants you have to check for drug interactions as well. So again, I'm not a doctor. Please check for yourself, do your research, ask your doctor before using any of the plants or plant products that you have not used before. Some recommended intros into foraging, where I probably started about 30 years ago. I kind of like these books here, the Great Field Guides to start with, get you familiar with basics. I mean, they have basic information. There's a lot more information out there, but I think it's a good start. And going with the dandelion, I did go to www.consumerhealthdigest as a reference for you today because it was easy access and very friendly without being too dry. Then when they did some references to their studies, they did have keywords that would bring you to the abstracts or the studies there. So enjoy. If you're interested, just go ahead. Questions, anyone? So, oh, by the way, this is my email address. If you have any questions, you can send it to squirrels38@hotmail.com.
Excellent. That was so great, Nancy. Thank you. So as you just said, we'll now open up the floor for anyone if there are any questions. So I will just go on to the live stream on Facebook and just see if there are any questions that we have so far. Okay, we have a question. Does the stem classify as leaves?
No, it is with the dandelion, you have a rosette of leaves. The stem is only part of the flower stem. It is not a leaf. It is supporting the reproductive organ of the plant.
Okay. We'll just wait a little bit and see if there are any other questions. I actually have a question myself while we're waiting for other ones to pop up. How did you get into foraging, Nancy? Like at what age?
Oh, that was interesting. My mother used to be a competing trap shooting contestant, and I was a little girl, And we'd have to go for these rides, my brother and sister in the back of the car, and we'd have to wait till she went through her competitions. And it was very boring. It would be on these fields with no houses, no friends, nothing. And we had to stay in the back. And my father, is seeing that I was kind of bored, started to show me a weed in the sand there. And it was a sorrel. The nice little, which some people have French sorrel. I think I don't know what they call it. It's a little sorrel up in Quebec, and it tasted sour. And he used to tell me he put it in his sandwiches. So, and I started picking a whole bunch of them, and I was teaching everybody else what this was. I was about 5 or 6 years old. So, and I don't know, it's just been part of it. My parents took me mushroom picking all the time. So it was just what we did. And then a friend of mine, she taught me about when grade 1 about balsam fir sap. I think it was just a natural interest. I lived in the country with 48 acres in the backyard. And my favorite place to play, because we were far away from friends, was in the woods. So I was constantly trying to figure things out, pick berries, of course, lots of blueberries and strawberries and whatever else I could get my hands on. It's always just been part of me.
Okay, neat. That's so neat. We have another question that just came up. It says, any good spots you could recommend to forage in the Cornwall area?
Oh, you want me to give away my secret spots? Okay, I do have a spot. And I guess I can, should I not? I mean, it's accessible to the public, and go to Floral Drive and past the gate. Nobody goes there except for service vehicles. Everything is nice and natural. Don't let anybody change that. Don't let them, how do you say, turn it into a campground again or anything. Just leave it as it is. I'm enjoying it as it is. So that's one of them. Other places would be, I mean, you take a car ride and you see some fields that haven't been used for a while. Maybe ask the farmer if you're allowed to. Oh, you know those concession roads that are between farmlands that are still gravel and hardly ever used except by the farmer? And then you'll see on the side, you have their fields with soy or corn, but that in-between area, I'm pretty sure it's not that bad. I mean, depends on what they put, but again, if there's a lot of weeds and they're looking healthy, maybe. But again, I have my spot, which I just told you, and I think that's an exemplary area. It's about as close as we get to clean around here, unless it's your own backyard and you haven't been doing terrible things to it and you've been there for a while and you know it's healthy. So again, or just take car rides and you'll find places. I used to love car rides, and that's probably how I found those other spots. So yeah, so that's it's a good question though, because it's getting more and more difficult. I admit it is more difficult. So yeah, any place that hasn't been treaded by humans for a while and that doesn't have too much traffic might be a good idea. Again, check around, know your areas.
Perfect. That's a wonderful question and a great answer. And I would maybe add just to that, whoever is interested in foraging, you know, the recommendations you made at the beginning, the sort of rules to follow are fantastic.
Yes.
You know, only take what you need and not
Exactly.
to overharvest.
I'm very protective of the areas though. So it's like, it's special. It really is. Once you get involved in this, you start seeing the importance of it all. Mm-hmm. It really is. It provides so much diversity if you just leave things alone. And that's what we need right now for protecting this planet.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. I don't see any more questions for now, but I may ask one myself again, if that's all right, while we're waiting. So do you personally, do you prefer like dandelion root tea or coffee?
I like the coffee. I like the coffee because it can play with the flavors a bit more. The tea probably has more medicinal benefits because it's avoiding the roasting. If you're going from health reasons, the tea probably is a lot better. Okay. I can't drink too much coffee. It's very hard on my stomach, but the dandelion coffee does a lot better for me, especially if you're trying to wean yourself off coffee. It's a great place to go, and you still get some health benefits. I'm personally using it for blood issues and liver issues myself right now. So, and I have noticed it does help or reduce the progression of certain things. So I'm sticking to it. I'm very sold on it. And even my doctor wants to hear updates about it. So, and she's what you call a specialist, so which is great. So she's using me as a guinea pig at this time.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, fantastic. We have another question. What about wild berries?
You better know your berries. Again, you have to still look and see if people have fields nearby that they're spraying with things they shouldn't be spraying with, which I wish they didn't. We have a lot of different wild berries that are edible, but we have a few we do really strictly have to stay away from. People don't realize sometimes that lily of the valley, the berries of that, pretty and red and toxic. It can kill you. We have the non-native honeysuckle bush with its red berries. You have to be careful to properly identify wild grapes. So if you're not sure, ask somebody who is, or do your research. Absolutely. You can't, if you know it's a raspberry, good. If you know it's a blueberry, great. Same with the strawberries. Anything else, make sure. Just make sure.
Okay, yeah, great advice. So I don't see any more questions in the comment section. And so if that is the last of the questions, then I will just say a big thank you to you, Nancy. Thank you so much for taking the time.
And my pleasure. It was fun.
Yeah, good. Yeah. And I think if anyone has any questions going forward, feel free to drop them in the comment section, and we will either relate them back to you, if that's all right, through your email address.
That's great.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we will be posting this workshop on the Great River Rapport website. So it will be found on Great River Rapport /workshops.ca. So
thank you very much.
Thanks.